Hello, everyone. Do you hear me? Yes. Great. So I am Carmen Posada. I am a food systems consultant, and I also have a master's degree in food journalism from the Basque Culinary Center. So it's very exciting for me to come back here and contribute in this topic. So as co-director of Futuro Coca and Coca Talks, I am going to talk about the meaning of reclaiming the coca leaf. So the coca leaf has been a millenary source of power for indigenous communities in the Amazon and in the Andes region for millennia. They have used the leaf for nutritional purposes, but also for medicinal purposes and for social purposes. So long jungle and mountain treks, strenuous days of working the land to produce food, ceremonial spaces, decision-making spaces, high dialogue spaces, they were all accompanied by the coca leaf's energy and serenity and alertness. It has always been present in many of indigenous communities in Colombia, Bolivia, Peru, and Brazil. This here is Gori Nejedeka. He is from the Muinane community in the Amazon, in the Colombian Amazon. You will meet him later again today. So when did the demonization of this plant start? Well, it actually started in colonial times. So when the European settlers came to America, they realized that the coca leaf was an intricate part of community, of the indigenous ways, of the governance. It was part of their cosmogony. And they were troubled, they were suspicious. They realized that coca leaf chewing led to a very productive and very coordinated slave work, which was good for them, but it also led to the possibility of the indigenous people orchestrating an uprising, so they were torn. But finally, the Second Lima Council decided to dub it the Devil's Talisman. That was the name the plant was given. Then the plant has a small renaissance period in the 19th century, where it is popularized again in drinks. Actually, it was popularized here in Europe. There was a drink called the Mariani wine. I'm not gonna go into depth into this because somebody else, one of my fellow speakers, is going to do it. So I'll just leave it at that. But then, in 1961, the International Drug Control Convention decided to categorize the coca leaf as a Schedule I substance. What does this mean? It means that it has the highest form of control, of fiscalization, of prohibition. And it is put up there with other substances that are very harmful, such as cocaine, heroin, opioids, and morphine, and many others. So why did this happen? Well, I believe it happened for a very unfair reason. There was a scientific report that had to do the investigation to determine what were the effects of the coca leaf. And this scientific report disregarded all the previous literature, the scientific literature that was available about the coca leaf, that mostly came from Peru. It disregarded it completely and decided to say that the coca leaf was harmful and that it was associated with malnutrition. So that's why it ended up in this list, and this international label is what partly contributed to the war on drugs discourse, which I think is a worldwide and very known discourse. And in Colombia, this has had a terrible effect because Colombian coca leaf growers, which are peasants, they are farmers that grow the leaf because it's profitable, are treated as criminals, are treated as drug lords, and they are incarcerated and killed. And this has also made it possible for the entire, or like for a worldwide sentiment that when you talk about coca, you're referring to cocaine. So coca equals cocaine. And this is something that is in the general imaginary of most people. So in the last 10, 20 years, there has a new burgeoning movement of redeeming the coca leaf has started to emerge in Colombia. Many chefs, many scientists, many journalists, many indigenous people, activists, they have all tried to reestablish the true value of the coca leaf by rescuing its traditional and ancestral uses, but also by innovating and researching new uses. But this is still very new. So why do I think it's important for like for these new uses to get heard. Because when you talk about new uses, you talk about new stories, new narratives. So we had the war on drugs discourse and narrative, and now we have a new narrative, or we're trying to create a new narrative. The concept of new narratives was actually included in Colombia's last, or its current drug policy plan. It's 2023-2033 plan. And it talks about the importance of creating new narratives, which are new stories and new paradigms that give us a different view of plants that have been historically viewed or understood as drugs, such as the coca leaf. So I am here to talk about this. Why is it important for us as Colombians to use new narratives to create a new reclaiming process of the coca leaf? And what does that reclaiming process look like? So obviously, the first step is to get rid of the stigma, is to dismantle the stigma. So coca is not cocaine. And parallels are very and baking and other types of preparations in the culinary segment. We understand that another part of the plant also is used to derive heroin or morphine. But we understand that poppy seeds are not heroin. So it's the same with the coca leaf, and my fellow speakers will be able to go into depth in this, but just as the poppy seed is not the same as heroin, the coca leaf is not the same as cocaine, because cocaine is just one of the alkaloids of the plant. It has 18 different alkaloids and a wide array of different components. But for me, it wasn't enough to just talk about dismantling the stigma. So I am a food systems consultant. I work in the sphere of food, agriculture, gastronomy, communities, territory, regeneration. And that is how the coca leaf came to me. I was invited to visit this beautiful region in Colombia called Lerma, Cauca. Cauca is like a province, and it is one of the most historically violent provinces in Colombia. I was invited to meet a group of farmers that were growing the coca leaf to produce or develop their own biofertilizer, so plant food that they used in an organic and very safe way to feed their orchards where they had their tomatoes, their lettuces, their coffee, their cacao, their bananas, etc. So I was mind blown, because in Colombia, most fertilizer is imported. So this was a game changer. And it got me so excited to see how this community that previously had been persecuted for growing coca leaf for cocaine production was now using the coca leaf for a different idea, for a different use, and a very interesting. To get on board with the new narratives and try to give my contribution to what can now be called the new narratives around the coca leaf. And throughout this journey, what I have realized is that the most important way of really redeeming and reclaiming the coca leaf is to incorporate it and interact with the plant in our everyday uses. So these are the pictures of the coca leaf fertilizer that is being developed in Lerma, Cauca, and you will learn more about this later also. But yeah, so this was one way of interacting with the plant. What other ways do we have of interacting with the plant on an everyday basis? So let's start with eating, of course. So this is the main focus of this event. And as my fellow speakers will tell you later, coca is in fact food. It can be turned into flour, and it can be used to make noodles or breads or pastries. It can also be used to infuse butters and oils. And it not only gives color, as you clearly can see, but it also gives a flavor and nutrition. So this is something very interesting that, again, you will learn in a bit. Okay, drinking coca. So yeah, coca can also be drunk. The coca tea is famous for being a very good remedy for high altitude sickness. So if you have gone to Machu Picchu, coca tea, so you can regulate and not feel dizzy and just out of place with the high altitude. But in Colombia, we have also started to infuse rums, beers, and local liquors and sodas with coca. So wearing coca, yeah, coca can also be clothing. So in El Tambo, Cauca, which is another region of Cauca, it's another village in the Cauca region in Colombia, There's a group of women, a women-led organization that has begun to use the coca leaf to dye fabrics such as cotton and silk. So they have made the experiment and they have come up with 96 different earthly tones that are all colored or dyed with the coca leaf. So this is very, very exciting. Planting coca, so obviously it's a plant, so I think it would be obvious to say that we can plant it. But for me, this is to say that the coca plant has an immense value for the agricultural sphere. So not only is it going to be, is it being used as a fertilizer, as I already told you, in Lerma Cauca, but also in the Amazon, the coca leaf is part of the jungle people's orchard, which is called the chagra. So I don't know if you maybe have heard of the milpa in Mesoamerica. So it's like the basic food, in Colombia. In Spanish, you can also call it pan coger. And what it means is that it's the small orchard for subsistence that the jungle people use. And the coca leaf is a natural and biological companion that grows in symbiosis with the cacao, the chili, the tobacco, the plantain, the chontaduro, among other plants. So it does have an immense agricultural value. Playing with coca. So dismantling the stigma also means not transferring the stigma to future generations and children. And in Colombia, this is very exciting because new artistic expressions with puppets and serigraphy centers and coca superhero workshops has started to emerge and tell children a different story and allow them to engage with the plant and interact with it in different beautiful ways. Learning from coca. So the coca is a teacher. She has much to teach us, and yes, she is a she. When you talk to any indigenous person from the Andes or the Amazon, they will confirm to you that the coca plant is a female. It has a female spirit. So through live podcasts and academic events like this one, this is the second coca talk that we have held. The first one was last year. And through publications made by universities and research centers and public organizations, many people, many politicians, many farmers, many chefs, academics, scientists, activists, artists, they have all started to urge the government to regulate the new alternative uses of the coca leaf. Because if we don't regulate them, they can't expand. So coca clearly has an emotional dimension. It did for me. So when I went to Lerma Cauca, I was so excited and so inspired to see the change of lives in the farmers that I decided that I also wanted to be part of this new train of ideas. And that's why I committed to the crazy idea with a fantastic group of people to co-create the first modern festival that celebrated the coca leaf, which is what Charles mentioned before. This is Futuro Coca. So the first festival was held last year in July. More than 2,500 people came. And we had a wide array of cultural and artistic expressions, such as concerts, theaters, puppet shows, workshops, cooking. It was an amazing experience where many people that never had talked to each other gathered and were able to share in harmony about the coca leaf. So finally, the spiritual power of the coca leaf. This is something that I have mentioned along my speech about the indigenous people, considering it a source of power, of social power, of political power, and spiritual power. So this person you see here, he's called the Mamos Enchina. He is a Kogi indigenous tribe elder. So the Kogi people live in the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta in the northern part of Colombia. It's one of the most biodiverse regions of the world. And he came to the festival. So mind you, the festival was in Bogota. It was in a very high-ranked and respected school. And he came and he spoke his own native tongue and he shared with everybody what the coca leaf meant to him and to his people. Even though we didn't understand the literal words, we understood the meaning and we saw the power that he had and the connection that he had with the plant and with nature. So it was amazing to see how ancestral wisdom could connect to the modern world through the coca leaf. And it also happened in this event, which also occurred in the festival, which was a virtual reality experience. So using the virtual reality technology from the West, people got inside and they landed in the Pirá-Paraná River, which is a very important river of the Amazon in Colombia, and they were able to see how the indigenous people lived. They were able to see how the coca leaf was harvested and transformed into mambe, or how the cassava plant was harvested and transformed into cassave. So this is another example. And for me, being a food systems consultant, I like to travel the world and see different experiences of people and communities trying to change the food system that we live in, because clearly the food system is broken. And I have seen many regenerative agriculture projects, biodynamic projects, permaculture, agroecology, and many of these communities and many of these ideas have their roots in the power of indigenous communities' thoughts. Because the truth is that indigenous communities all over the world have had a historically healthy and harmonious relationship with their land, with their food, and with their seeds, a true connection. So I believe the coca leaf is going to play a very important role in being that tool that connects ancestral practices with Western technology to create and to transform the food system to something that we don't even understand. And I truly hope that that happens. So, as I told you before, it's not enough to just let go of the stigma. We don't want to go from stigma to apathy or to ignorance or to superfluous sympathy. We want people to understand that Colombia is coca. And this means that just as Colombia is coffee or Shakira is Colombia, coca is also Colombia. Coca is Colombia and Colombia is coca. And we want the plant to be a source of pride and joy for people in Colombia when they travel abroad, and not a source of shame and sadness. And we want to be able to spread the importance of the coca leaf and make it present in our pantries, in our medicine cabinets, in our closets. So this here is mambe. So mambe is a mixture of dried coca leaf, grounded very finely, and mixed with the ash of a tree called jarumo. And when they mix it, it creates this beautiful green powder. And indigenous people in the Amazon particularly, they use it. They put a little bit in their cheek, like this. I use it every day. And it gives you great energy, a very alert, but a very tranquil energy, and you're very concentrated, but you're not edgy. I can't drink coffee. Coffee is not good for me. It's very strong for me. So I interact with the coca leaf every day through mambe. I eat a little bit I put a little bit in my cheek, and I just leave it there, and it just helps me have a nice and relaxed but very alertful day. So this is the way I interact with the plant every day, and I hope that someday you will be able to interact with this gorgeous plant as well. Thank you. Carmen.